Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show in which we discuss all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. And today we have a brand new deck for you, and just as a quick heads up, this is not a budget deck, although I do think it should be fairly easy to find substitutes for those expensive cards. But before we do that, just a quick reminder to please click subscribe if you enjoy my videos. I'm currently growing the channel and I'm getting very close to 1,000 subscribers, so it would mean the world to me if you could support me. And today's deck is going to be based around the Balrog, Durin's Bane. For 5 colors, 1 black and 1 red, it's a 7/5 legendary creature avatar demon with this spell costs 1 less to cast for each permanent sacrificed this turn. Haste, the Balrog Durin's Bane can't be blocked except by legendary creatures, and when the Balrog dies, destroy target artifact or creature an opponent controls. So this is a really cool build around that really stood out to me as I went over the set, and obviously what we're going to be building around is sacrifice effects, so we're going to have a lot of stuff that makes treasures, because treasures are particularly good with this because they add 2 mana towards his mana cost. But then also we want effects that are going to make our opponent sacrifice stuff or each player sacrifice stuff, because that's going to give it huge discounts too. Once this comes down early, it can smash face really well thanks to only being able to block by legendary creatures. It also kills in 3 hits with commander damage, which is very relevant, and it's easy to cast even with command attacks thanks to its discount. Finally, it has that death trigger, so even if your opponent does manage to take it down, they're still going to pay a price for doing so. It's just a really cool and solid commander. I tend to think the commanders that can have a big discount are pretty good, and this certainly can. So without further ado, let's get started. We're starting off with Academy Manufacture, which is obviously very good in any deck where we're making treasures, and we're making a lot of them here. We can also sacrifice the other 2 tokens that this gives us, even though it does cost us mana to do so, so it's probably not going to help with casting the Balrog that much. Captain Lannery's Storm is going to be great by creating a treasure whenever it attacks, and then when we sacrifice any treasure, and we're making a lot of those, she's going to get pumped. This can help bring the Balrog down pretty early. Cavern Horde Dragon has a big discount just like the Balrog does, but his discount requires our opponents to have artifacts. That's generally going to be the case, so this can come down for very cheap and make a bunch of treasures, which are going to work really well with our game plan of summoning the Balrog. Fleshback Marauder is one of multiple effects that make each opponent sacrifice something. This works very well with what our commander wants to be doing, and in a 4-player game, if you cast the Balrog after this ends up being mana positive by basically adding 1 more mana than it costs to cast. Gadrak the Crown Scourge is going to be making a lot of treasures in this deck, since a lot of creatures are going to be dying thanks to our Fleshbag Marauder style effects. Generator Servant is a great way to get the Balrog out early, because it essentially adds 3 mana in this deck towards the Balrog thanks to the fact that it sacrifices itself. The haste is a bit redundant, but having the Balrog come down on turn 3 or 4 is pretty fantastic. Goldspan Dragon is an excellent card in many decks, and this one is centered around treasures and sacrificing, so it's going to be really helpful here. With this out, our treasures basically become black lotuses towards summoning the Balrog, which is insane. Grim Hireling will get us a nice amount of treasure tokens and gives us a good way to also sacrifice them for value, and the discount will still apply to the Balrog. Jury, Master of the Review, should grow very big in this deck, and then when it actually dies itself, it's going to deal a ton of damage to one of our opponents. Lobelia Sackville Baggins is going to fit very nicely by providing a bit of graveyard hate and making a ton of treasures. Mahadi Emporium Master can give us a lot of treasures since creatures are going to be dying a lot. Marionette Master is one of the ways we finish the game. With this out, every treasure we sacrifice can deal 4 damage. Mayhem Devil should again dish out a lot of damage because we're going to be doing so much sacrificing in this deck. Merciless Executioner is another copy of Fleshbag Marauder. Mirkwood Bats is perfect in this deck, and it's going to trigger a lot. It's definitely going to be a must kill, and our opponents are going to have to deal with this. Pain Distributor is a really cool one. It helps us ramp, but it also helps our opponents ramp. However, they're going to be taking damage whenever they use those treasures. Patron of the Arts makes a treasure on the way in and on the way out. That's a fantastic rate, and it works really well with our sacrifice effects. Spawn of Ulamog can give us an Eldrazi spawn every time a non-token creature dies. The Eldrazi spawns basically add 2 mana for the Balrog, so that's really sweet. This is particularly good after an opponent's board wipe because it allows us to recast our Balrog with the command attacks very easily. Pitiless Plunderer is usually a combo card, but in this deck we're using it in a more quote-unquote fair way. It's a very good card still, and getting a treasure every time a creature we control dies is really good. Plaguecrafter is yet another effect that forces each player to sacrifice. Professional Facebreaker is going to make sure that we have a steady stream of treasures and that we can use those treasures to get some real card advantage. Rankle and Torbran is perfect in this deck because 2 out of the 3 modes we can choose are really good. We want to be making treasures and we want people to be sacrificing stuff. Reckless Barbarian is similar to Generator Servant. It basically adds 3 mana towards the Balrog. Roseroom Treasurer is going to make treasures pretty consistently, so that's a really good card card to have in this deck. Ruthless Knave gives us a nice little engine for when we have a lot of treasures going. It can be a really good draw engine late game with enough treasures, but otherwise it's still going to be able to shuffle around resources, and it's just a very solid card. Ruthless Technomancer can sacrifice something huge to get a bunch of treasures, and then late game it can give us some nice recursion as well. Smothering Abomination is going to make us sacrifice something every upkeep, and then we're going to draw a card whenever we sacrifice a creature. We're going to be doing that a lot in this deck. Stormkiln Artist is going to do quite a bit of work in this deck. It's going to give us some treasures, and it's going to be pretty huge by itself as well. The Balrog of Moria is a really solid card because it acts a little bit like an unexpected windfall or big score when we cycle it, or we can just hold off and play it as a huge threat late game. Both modes are pretty good. Undercity Scrounger is a card that's not usually that playable, but since there should be so many creatures dying in this deck, then it's going to be quite a consistent way to make treasure tokens. Anksorn is going to double up all of our treasure output, which is obviously really good. For instance, we have the usual big score and unexpected windfall. These are great cards on their own, but they also synergize with our game plan. Bolt Bend is going to help to protect the Balrog a little bit. Deadly Dispute fits this deck perfectly because it includes sacrifice and treasure creation both on one card. Fake Your Own Death is a great way to recur the Balrog and give us a treasure that we can cash in later if he gets removed again. Nasty End can be pretty decent in this deck. We have a couple of legendaries, and the Balrog itself is legendary and has a death trigger, so any of those work really well to draw 3 cards at instant speed. Sting and Study can draw 7 cards for 7 mana at instant speed. Do make sure that you have ways to Riku the life though. And Warping Whale is a really interesting one. It's basically a colorless counterspell for sorceries which can catch your opponents unawares, but it also can create an Eldrazi Scion at instant speed. That's a great way to get 2 mana for our Balrog. And the exile target creature with power toughness 1 or less can sometimes be relevant as well if the opponent has something like an Esper Sentinel. For artifacts, we have Ashnod's Altar, which is going to work very well with the theme of the deck. Glittering Stockpile can sacrifice for a ton of mana after we've grown it a little bit with counters. Idol of Oblivion is going to draw us quite a few cards since we're making so many tokens. Phyrexian Altar is another card similar to Ashnod's Altar, which works really well since we're looking to sacrifice stuff. Skull Climb is going to work really well with all of our sacrifice effects to draw us cards. And moving on to enchantments, we have Black Market Connections, which is going to give us treasure tokens and creatures that we can sacrifice. This is a very solid card in the deck. Descent into Avernus is going to be fantastic by providing us progressively more treasures. Fable of the Mirror Breaker is fantastic, and it also gives us a token that can make treasures. Rain of Riches is a really interesting one by giving stuff that we cast with treasures cascade. Revel in Riches can generate a lot of treasures for us, but it can also just straight up win us the game. And Spiteful Banditry is a good board wipe that's going to leave some treasures behind. For sorceries, we have Fatal Grudge. This is a great way to get everybody to sacrifice something. You can even sacrifice an enchantment, and then your opponents will have to sacrifice that. Feather Storm is another way to allow us to deal with enchantments, which is important. Inspired Tinkering is going to create 3 treasure tokens and provide us quite a bit of card advantage. Pirate's Pillage also makes treasure tokens, so we're very interested in that. Reckless Endeavor is a board wipe that can also leave behind a bunch of treasure tokens. And Visions of Ruin is going to deal with 3 artifacts and leave 3 treasure tokens behind, which is fantastic. For lands, we have Mines of Moria, which is very flavorful and can also make treasures, which is obviously great. And Witch's Clinic, which is a good way to give our commander lifelink and gain back some of that life that we're going to be losing from some of our pay life effects. So anyway, there you have it. This has been the Balrog Durin's Bane deck tech. What do you think about this one? Are you excited to try it out? You think I missed anything or added some cards that shouldn't be in there? Let me know in the comment section below. I read all comments and respond to all of them too. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like or subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next time, take care.